The year is 1967. Venezuela, a nation rich in oil and fraught with political turmoil, found itself positioned directly on the front line of the Cold War ideological battle. Despite functioning democracy under President Raúl Leoni, communist insurgencies, financed and inspired by Havana, persisted in challenging Caracas's authority. The atmosphere was thick with paranoia and radical ambition. This was not just a local skirmish. This was a flashpoint where the future direction of Latin America was being violently decided. The communist visionaries in Venezuela, having failed repeatedly with domestic mobilization, believed a swift external military shock was the only path left. They looked southward, across the turbulent Caribbean, to the revolutionary heartland of Fidel Castro for the muscle needed to ignite the final fire.
The Machurucuto landing was not an improvised assault. It was Operation Simón Bolívar, meticulously orchestrated by Cuban intelligence and approved personally by Fidel Castro. The objective was clear: insert a specialized force of highly trained Cuban commandos alongside seasoned Venezuelan Communist Party militants deep into the heart of Sucre state. Their mission was not merely symbolic. They were tasked with establishing a permanent guerrilla front, seizing vital infrastructure, and sparking a massive internal uprising that would topple the democratic government. These volunteers were rigorously trained in clandestine warfare, operating in remote Cuban camps, studying maps of the Venezuelan coast, and preparing for a fight they believed would herald a new communist dawn for their nation. The operation involved two specific groups: a vanguard of 18 men destined for the first landing, followed by a second, larger contingent waiting offshore. Their infiltration was planned for the desolate, scrub-covered coastline of Machurucuto, a secluded beach perfect for nocturnal insertion. The entire plan hinged upon stealth and speed. They had a small window of opportunity to land, conceal their equipment, and melt away into the rugged terrain before dawn broke. Crucially, they carried heavy equipment: radios, crates of ammunition, and supplies, all designed to sustain a protracted guerrilla campaign. The planning was excellent on paper, emphasizing military precision, but it severely underestimated the vigilance of Venezuelan security forces and the harsh reality of the landing geography.
The journey itself was grueling and fraught with danger. Leaving from Cuban shores aboard an innocuous fishing vessel, the rebels navigated treacherous Caribbean waters, constantly battling seasickness and the pervasive fear of naval detection. The long passage lasted days, testing the morale and physical limits of the tightly packed crew. They had to maintain strict radio silence and blackout conditions, relying only on celestial navigation and the captain's deep knowledge of the coastal currents. As they approached the Venezuelan coast, the tension became almost unbearable. Every distant light, every passing vessel represented a potential catastrophe. Yet their commitment to the revolutionary cause fueled their exhausted bodies onward toward the appointed rendezvous. In the pre-dawn hours of May 8, 1967, the vanguard arrived at the isolated Machurucuto beach in Sucre state. Despite their careful planning, fate intervened almost immediately. As they began unloading the heavy caches of weapons, they were spotted not by high-tech surveillance, but by local fishermen, often the unsung eyes of coastal security. These immediate civilian sightings alerted a small, nearby National Guard outpost. The element of surprise, which was crucial to Operation Simón Bolívar's success, vanished within minutes of the rubber dinghies touching the sand. This swift detection proved to be the single most devastating operational failure of the entire campaign, triggering an immediate and overwhelming government response before the rebels could properly disperse. The initial engagement was brutal and decisive. Venezuelan National Guard troops, arriving swiftly, cornered the landing party on the beach. A fierce firefight erupted in the early morning darkness. The well-armed guerrillas initially inflicted casualties, but they were pinned down, unable to utilize their heavy equipment effectively, trapped between the sea and the tightening security cordon. 2 Cuban officers were killed almost immediately, and several others were wounded or captured. Critically, the second wave of invaders, realizing the initial landing had been compromised, aborted their mission and retreated back to sea, leaving their comrades stranded and ensuring the landing force was instantly and hopelessly outnumbered. The revolt was collapsing almost before it had truly begun. President Raúl Leoni reacted with swift and unprecedented force. Recognizing the gravity of a foreign-backed invasion, he immediately declared a high alert. Military forces, including specialized counter-guerrilla units and naval assets, were deployed en masse to the area. Leoni understood that showing weakness would invite further attempts, and his political survival depended on crushing the insurgency instantly and publicly. The Machurucuto region transformed overnight into a heavily militarized zone. Helicopters scoured the jungle canopy, while thousands of soldiers established search parameters. The government's coordinated and overwhelming response demonstrated that Venezuela's democratic infrastructure, though flawed, possessed the necessary resilience to repel external military threats. Those rebels who escaped the beach firefight attempted to implement their deep infiltration strategy, vanishing into the surrounding jungle and mountains. But the unforgiving terrain, combined with the lack of crucial local support and the relentless pursuit by highly motivated Venezuelan troops, rendered their guerrilla training useless. They faced difficult logistical challenges, lack of potable water, exhaustion, and increasingly severe isolation. Over the following days, the remaining insurgents were hunted down one by one. Many surrendered due to injury and starvation, while others were captured following brief, desperate skirmishes. Within a week, the Machurucuto invasion force was completely neutralized, proving that revolutionary zeal was no match for decisive, organized state military power in the harsh realities of the Venezuelan wilderness. The ramifications of the landing quickly moved far beyond Venezuela's borders. Caracas immediately accused Cuba of blatant aggression and intervention, presenting the captured Cuban commanders and their recovered weapons as irrefutable evidence before the Organization of American States, the OAS. This incident severely escalated Cold War tensions throughout Latin America, forcing regional powers to choose sides. The OAS strongly condemned Cuba's actions, viewing the Machurucuto landing as a profound threat to hemispheric security and sovereignty. In response, Venezuela officially broke all diplomatic ties with Cuba, an estrangement that would last for decades. This international spotlight solidified Venezuelan democracy's moral high ground, effectively isolating Havana and dampening further state-sponsored revolutionary enthusiasm across the continent. In the immediate aftermath, the captured insurgents, both Venezuelan and Cuban, faced rigorous interrogation and public trials. The confessions and evidence confirmed the depth of Cuban involvement, giving President Leoni immense political leverage. Domestically, the failure of Machurucuto completely discredited the armed revolutionary wing of the Venezuelan Communist Party, forcing a critical strategic pivot. Recognizing that military insurrection was futile and deeply unpopular, the majority of the PCV leadership opted for a legal political path. They sought reintegration into the democratic system, realizing that the ballot box offered a more viable avenue for change than the bullet. This catastrophic failure marked a pivotal moment of maturation for Venezuelan democracy, purging the system of its most violent existential threats. The Machurucuto landing remains a stark, often forgotten lesson in the limits of externally supported insurgency. It demonstrated that robust, if imperfect, democracy could withstand the most aggressive Cold War pressures when supported by decisive military action and public rejection of foreign intervention. The failure of the 1967 landing essentially ended the era of large-scale Cuba-backed military attempts to overthrow the Venezuelan government, strengthening confidence in the democratic framework for the next 2 decades. For a generation, it reaffirmed that Venezuela's political destiny would be decided in Caracas, not in Havana, paving the way for a more stable, albeit fragile, political climate, and confirming the ultimate strategic success of President Leoni's strong response. The sand of Machurucuto holds the whispers of a revolt that nearly changed history, a dramatic confrontation between communist ambition and democratic survival. Though the names of the men who landed that night are largely forgotten, the historical ripple effects continue to influence regional politics even today, serving as a powerful reminder of how perilously close Venezuela came to a totalitarian fate. This failed invasion became a firewall, stabilizing the nation against the ideological tide of revolution sweeping across Latin America. It is a chapter of history that demands remembrance, a testament to the fact that even the most meticulously planned operations can crumble under the scrutiny of reality. Thank you for exploring this hidden history with us. If you found this deep dive compelling, we have many more stories waiting for you.